This is the $1 trillion Satoshi trial. Closing written arguments had to be in at 4 p.m. today, on Friday, the 8th of March 2024. With BTC at over $1 trillion in market cap, makes this the largest trial in financial history. We can see here on this comparative graph the largest bubbles in financial history. We have the most famous bubble in financial history, represented in red, being the tulip bubble from 1634 to 1637. We have the South Sea Company bubble, otherwise known as the Mississippi Company bubble, between 1719 and 1722. And we have the Nasdaq bubble between 1994 and 2003, known as the dot-com bubble. But you can see they are dwarfed in comparison by the bubble that is BTC, represented in orange. This could be catastrophic. So let's remind ourselves of what's happened. First to take the stand was Craigoshi Nakamoto himself in cross-examination. He said, "I created the system that made the Northern Territory government happy. I also designed a system for iVote, the New South Wales electoral system. So when you're saying just the security guy, I'm just the security guy who created the PKI system. That's some of the basic digital signing infrastructure in Australia. I'm just the security guy who created the secure login functionality, poker and game management for Lassiter's, Playboy and several other casinos. That just the security guy who implemented this for the Department of Homeland Security. Just the security guy, and I could keep going if you like." Craigoshi Nakamoto was cross-examined by Jonathan "It's a Forgery" Hoff of Bird & Bird. According to Jonathan Hoff, literally everything Craig has done in his entire life has either been a forgery or a fraud. And he said, "You forged this, didn't you?" It's as if he thinks Craig spent his entire life forging documents, because this is all we got from everything he said. There was nothing about his identity in it. It was all to do with forgery and fraud, and you forged this, didn't you? I cannot repeat this enough. This document, you forged this, didn't you? And you forged that one. And you forged this one. What about that? Yes, you were forging it, weren't you? You forged this, you forged that. On and on and on. Which is why we have Jonathan, "It's a Forgery" Hoff. On the plaintiff's side, being cross-examined by Craig's lawyers, we had Stephen "Spiral is Square, is Block, is Copa" Lee. He initially claimed to be an independent lead at Spiral BTC, but later admitted that Spiral was funded and sat on the board at Block. Block was initially Square, that changed its name to Spiral, and the Spiral was a member of Copa. Block is still advertised on Copa's website as a member. So this was absolutely hilarious. How can you be an independent expert witness when you're on the board of the opposing counsel? It is absolutely ridiculous. This was literally one of the many funny moments in court. After Stephen Lee, we then had Marty Assassination Markets Malmi. Marty put a post out on Twitter saying that he would like to see Bitcoin being used for assassination markets. He also blocked Satoshi Nakamoto's access to Bitcoin Talk. He says he loves Satoshi and that all Satoshi had to do was ask his permission to access Bitcoin Talk, but doesn't know if Satoshi emailed him to request access because he never looked at any of his emails. He says he couldn't access the Satoshi Nakamoto email correspondence in time for this court case because they had been archived. He said he loved Bitcoin and Satoshi Nakamoto and that he did not intend to lock Satoshi out of Bitcoin Talk. It's just that's what effectively happened. Next up was Adam "Satoshi didn't understand Bitcoin" back. He said Bitcoin no longer follows the Bitcoin protocol or the white paper. He said Satoshi didn't understand Bitcoin and that he was wrong. He was introduced and referred to himself as an independent expert witness, yet failed to disclose in his witness statement that he was in actual fact the CEO of Blockstream that are on the board of Copa, who are the plaintiffs that are actually bringing the claim. He claims that Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin using his Hashcash invention, but admitted the proof of work that was similar to Hashcash that was actually created by Cynthia DeWerk and Moni Nail years before, and that there were lots of open source material available on the internet explaining how his Hashcash invention worked before he'd actually invented it. He claims to not know the difference between his own alternative SegWit protocol creation and Blockstream's Layer 2 Lightning solution and Craig Wright's scaling technology. Next up was Patrick "They Finessed It For Me" Madden. Patrick Michael Madden is 44 years old, runs Right Click Forensics Limited that was incorporated in 2011. He said he is not an expert in PGP keys, which is pretty good privacy keys. He's not an expert in LaTeX. He didn't use the enterprise version of Grammarly to check the document. And he admitted that Bird & Bird, the opposing counsel, wrote his independent expert opinion for him. He said they finessed it. Had multiple meetings with Bird & Bird to write his report. He also didn't want to use an independent personal assistant to help him because he didn't like to work that way. It's my personal opinion that I think Copa is going to use this guy as a patsy. Next, there was Zuko. Zcash is better than Bitcoin but centralized Wilcox. Zuko Wilcox denied receiving Bitcoin in 2009. He denied downloading the Bitcoin software in 2009 because he didn't have a Windows computer. He later admitted to having a Windows computer in 2009 to program using the Python computer programming language. He also later admitted to downloading the Bitcoin software in 2009, but on a Linux computer. He said he didn't know and therefore could not explain the timeline of events that he was involved in when involving himself in Bitcoin and creating Zcash. He said he loved Bitcoin because it was a distributed network that private electronic cash required. Stated he created Zcash because it was better than Bitcoin because it was more anonymous, but admitted Zcash was centrally controlled. We then had Arthur, it may or may not have, Rosenthal. He swore that he'd not seen, watched or heard anything to do with the trial, but said he was hurt by what Craig had said previously about him in court. He didn't think that the Bitcoin white paper could have been written in LaTeX, but admitted it could have been. And then one of the last but not least witnesses to be cross-examined was Sarah, it was not my intention to mislead, Micklejohn. She describes herself as a professor in cryptography and security at the University College London and a staff research scientist at Google. She described the brand new and sealed computer Gavin Andresen saw being unpacked for the key signing as seemed new. She put in her report that the hotel Wi-Fi, its router and the wallet downloaded for the signing could have been spoofed. Later admitted that the spoofing she described is extremely complex along the lines of government espionage and most likely wasn't spoofed. When pressed by Shoesmith's why, if that's what did not happen, it was in her report, she failed to provide an answer. Shoesmiths pressed on to ask, are you seriously suggesting the signing sessions with two experts could have been spoofed? Her reply was, it was not my intention to mislead. But she did. All in all, I think this image sums up what the court case has been like for Copa.